Hey, what's up, you guys? Bloody Jacob here to give you my thoughts on The Strangers Chapter 1. Now, as a bit of a background, I like the original Stranger films okay. My favorite is actually Prey at Night. That's just one I've had kind of more enjoyment out of. And I held off until now watching this one. There's been a lot of negative reviews and negative feedback on this, and I'm someone that forms my own opinion, but I still, regardless, took long enough to get to this one. Um, Now, this is part of a planned trilogy. I believe they've already shot chapter 2 and 3. Chapter 2, I think, is still being released sometime next year. This is directed by Rennie Harlan, who directed A Nightmare on Elm Street 4, The Dream Master, which I've always liked. Had a good experience seeing that at an outdoor screening at one point with the cast and everything. He also directed Die Hard 2, Cliffhanger, Legend of Hercules, and he has a very varied, history in film. But he is a capable filmmaker nonetheless, and he's tackled all three of these. And it stars Madelaine Petsch, who most people would know, if anything, from Riverdale. I actually had the pleasure of meeting Madelaine briefly back around 2018 or so, and she's a very, very kind person. Um, so I felt a bit bad when I heard some of the bad press on this movie. And this first chapter, it is for the most part kind of a remake of the original film. So the beats of it. They end up having their car seemingly breaking down, and having to stay the night at this local Airbnb essentially. As it's worked on, some questions around when it happened and the repairmen and stuff like that. And of course, the townspeople, they're, newcomers or whatever. So they have that, kind of overdone, disdain for, what are these kids about, coming into their town and stuff like that. That whole kind of cliche attitude. And of course, eerie sort of odd things start happening. Knocks at the doors, someone asking for Tamara over and over outside. In the middle of the woods, so obviously someone wouldn't accidentally end up there most of the time. And of course it picks up, increasingly sort of like violent, more direct, home invasion, type of aspects occur to a point, of course not being their home, but you get what I'm saying. And I gotta say, I did not have a problem with this movie. Do I think it was great? No, I thought it was fine. I think Madeleine Petsch does a really good job from an emotion and expression standpoint. I thought she was, very, raw with a lot of what she conveyed. Froy Gutierrez, not as impressionable, but he had a more kind of limited part, being the boyfriend. But even he was semi likable, even in moments where you're supposed to think the boyfriend's kind of a dick, kind of a pushing things a bit where he might not have to, but he's actually likable acting wise too. Um, and I like the color palette to this one. I know a lot of people said, "Oh, it lacks like Rennie Harlan's usual, like flair." If you do like his filmmaking, and I don't know, there's still a lot of good shots. There's good framing work. I noticed. And honestly, I'm not someone who's ever like big on the original, like I said. And while Prey at Night is still my favorite, I actually do think I prefer Chapter 1 here to the original movie. That might be sacrilegious to some, but I quite enjoyed it. And like I said, this Chapter 1 is a remake of that first movie. But, there are like slight deviations here and there, some scenes that they did that, weren't in the original. Um, Another big complaint I heard with Chapter 1 is that, how stupid the characters are and such. I mean, I maybe I'm numb to it, but I've loved horror and slashers, especially all my life. And to me, the characters weren't any more dumb here than they are in your typical 80s, 90s slasher fare. So it's not really something that's, I think, any more worth discussing than it usually would be in the genre. Um, but yeah, it ends off on, that kind of ominous note, somewhat similar to the first, with, of course, a bit of a deviation to set up the trilogy. Um, But yeah, I'm excited. I'm comforted that they've shot the other two movies, so at least we'll hopefully be getting the release of Chapter 2 next year. But yeah, I enjoyed it. I'm kind of kind of warmed to it more as I've sat on it for the past day or so. I'd at least give it like a, B minus B, somewhere in there, but I could see it, swaying a bit. Probably not gonna go much higher than that, but I don't know. I liked it. I enjoyed it well enough. I thought it was a solid, like modern. Not that the first one's all that old, but I thought it was like a solid enough slasher flick. It had enough eeriness. Actors were good. You even have Richard Brake here in a bit part, hoping his part expands in the sequels. But yeah, I guys thought about it. Is there anyone else who liked it or thought it was alright at least? But yeah, follow me on TikTok, of course, Twitter, Instagram. Peace.